I had only heard about other dimensions in movies. I had only read about near-death experiences, aliens and psychedelic substances in magazines, books, and saw it probably on other YouTube videos. But yet it was never something I really wanted to get involved with because I had too few points of contact with the esoteric world. Sure, I've meditated and thought about whether there are other beings out there, but until I've experienced it myself, I've always had this doubt or a healthy skepticism, so to speak. One day, an acquaintance approached me and told me about the technology that allows you to see incredible things. It was so incredible that it couldn't be described in words. You have to experience it for yourself. Well, he asked me if I had heard of ayahuasca. I became very curious because yes, I have heard of it, but I had no idea how it works or what happens to you when you take it. Well, he said there is a simple version of it, something that doesn't last too long, just for several minutes, and it is far more pleasant to handle. We were talking about DMT, dimethyltryptamine, a hallucinogenic substance that is found in some plants and some animals and even in us humans. I was naturally curious and wanted to try it out. I went into my first DMT trip quite relaxed. I had no idea what to expect, so I felt neither anticipation nor fear. But I was open and ready to accept the experience as it came. But before the actual trip could begin, a ceremony had to be held. Someone who holds the ceremony is called a shaman. His task is to prepare you for the journey. And the shaman performs a ritual to drive away evil spirits, and the breathing exercises you do help you to focus. The DMT is then smoked from a pipe, a deep puff that should be held in the lungs for as long as possible. My session was accompanied by music, and when the music started, the journey began. I now had the feeling of sinking about the meter into the ground, and then my body began to vibrate, very slightly. It's a pleasant feeling, and you can observe what's happening to you inside. First, a tunnel or a long corridor opened up, and at the end of which I saw 2 or 3 red dots that reminded me of 2 eyes. These red eyes came closer and closer. It took me a while to cross the tunnel, but the eyes were getting closer. The tunnel itself took a red mesh pattern, which kept changing. I was able to look around and realize that I was in a 3-dimensional space. It was a kind of waiting room with other beings standing nearby who had caught sight of me. I sensed that they were watching me. They observed me. They were probably waiting too. The creatures looked like walking cacti or a mixture of plant and snake. In any case, they had green patterned skin on which the patterns were constantly changing. When I looked away and took a closer look at the wall of the room, whose tiles were also constantly changing, I found myself sitting in a chair, as if I were at the dentist. The 3 snake-like creatures stood around me and asked me to open my mouth. It was as if they sent a thought into my head, and I understood what they wanted, and so I did as they asked. They tilted my head with the light touches and examined the roof of my mouth. At the same time, they touched my face and hands with fine, gentle feelers, as if they were taking my pulse, as if I were at a doctor's examination. All of a sudden, a very strong feeling of love flowed through me, a love like that of a mother for her child. And I was the child here. I knew this feeling because that was how I had felt towards my mother as a child, only it was much more intense here. These creatures were very curious about my body, especially my mouth area, and I just let them do their thing while I enjoyed the feeling of love that flowed through my body. Next, I found myself on some kind of a temple complex. I don't know how I got there. I was suddenly there. Sitting on a stone throne was a kind of a god, reminiscent of an Olmec. The Olmecs were a Mesoamerican civilization that existed before the Maya. The god called me to him. As I looked at him, I noticed that his body was constantly twisting as if he were an Autobot from the Transformers movies. His arms and legs, as well as his upper body, were turning on their own axis and reassembling themselves. He looked straight at me and stuck out his tongue. He also asked me to stick out my tongue with a kind of telepathy. So I did, but then his face multiplied and all these faces stuck out their tongues in turn. The whole room was filled with these faces. And they suddenly made a noise that sounded like a shrill, high-pitched tone. Next, I was in a golden room where there was a golden casket. It opened and many golden cogwheels flew out of it. I have never seen so much shining gold. In fact, it wasn't just gold, it was light. And finally I landed in a field where I met a clown. I call him a clown because he was wearing this typical clown clothes and he was giggling incessantly. I giggled inwardly. He made a few contortions, still chuckling, and then started waving. I became sad. I became sad because he was saying goodbye to me, and he got sad too. But then he giggled again and disappeared, leaving me with a feeling of sadness and beauty. And so the trip was over. I opened my eyes, and that experience was hard to believe because it felt so real, so full of details that you could observe yourself watching it in real time. You could think about it, interact with it, feel it. But what I missed most after the trip were the green plants like snake creatures. It's strange to say, but it felt like they were my family. I couldn't shake the strongest feeling that my mother had left me. I really wanted to see this creature again. And it's not unusual, they say, to meet a creature several times on other trips. Maybe next time I will meet it at some point. To sum up, I have to say that the trip made me think for a long time. I had a creative urge and immediately had to paint the pictures you all see here. My focus in everyday life sharpened and I was no longer so self-centered. My dreams also changed as a result, and other strange things happened too, but I'll come back to that another time. I hope it was interesting and you were able to take something away with you. So, see you next time.